This guy right here made $1 million in trading in 24 months. This guy, $1 million in trading. 90% of people fail in trading, at least, probably more. But this guy made $1 million in 24 months from trading. So he says, let's watch his 7 lessons and see if there's something we can learn from him.
I made $1 million from trading in under 24 months, but none of it would have been possible if I didn't learn these 7 valuable lessons. And no, this wasn't done by over leveraging or over trading. In fact, at one firm, I turned $2,000 into over $200,000. And if you don't believe me, here's the proof. Each
$200 into $200,000. Isn't that the dream? That's what everyone on YouTube wants. Here's proof. He says it's proof. Let's see. One remarkable statistic. Okay, so this is the prop firm that's verifying that he made $238,000 and only spent $2,500. This guy's definitely not your average trader if he's doing that.
of the lessons that I'm about to share, nobody talks about, at least not the way that I'm going to. And all these points rely on each other, so make sure you pay close attention and do everything exactly as I say. It'll
Okay.
save you thousands of dollars and years of wasted time. Now,
That's good, but also don't do everything exactly as he says. You have to also respect your uniqueness and maybe make some adjustments for you personally, because maybe you're not exactly like him in every possible way. But here's what I'm going to say. If you made $1 million in trading that fast, I'm listening, and we should all listen. So let's hear it.
Now, let's get right into it. Point number 1, less emphasis on strategy, more on processes. Now, if you want to talk about
Already, I like it.
wasted time and energy, this is where most traders find themselves quitting. Every trader starts out the same. They open up a brokerage account, place a few trades, make or lose a little bit, or maybe even a lot of money. Maybe they catch a bull run and think they're a genius until the bull run
I did that.
ends and they give
Did you do that? That happened to me.
back all the gains. So it might take a while
Not all the gains, but
before they realize they don't have an actual plan. And everybody's timeline is different, but eventually everyone realizes they need a strategy. Nearly every trader will go through this phase of discovering new systems and strategies. They find one, test it for a bit, it doesn't work for them, so they abandon it and try and find something new. And this was me for a solid 6 to 7 years. And the biggest problem wasn't that these systems didn't have edge, I just never used them long enough to find out if they did. And I wish somebody told me this sooner. Something that works even just 30% of the time is enough to build an edge around. The real money's made with your processes. A professional trader can take a losing system and find a way to make really great money if their other processes are sharp.
Yeah, so I just want to say that we think of edge only from a technical standpoint, strategic edge in the market, when the probability of whatever pattern you're trading is higher, right? Higher than 50% or so, right? You have a greater chance of making money than losing it, bottom line. But do you ever think about your psychological edge? Because that's a whole nother kind of edge as well. And he's talking about something called strategy hopping. Strategy hopping applies in trading and it applies in life. These are the people that go from one diet to another diet to another diet to another diet. First they're doing, low carb, and then they're doing keto, and now they're doing carnivore, and they never lose the weight, and they always think it's the diet. It's not the diet, it's you in that case. Not you. Not you, but you know what I'm saying. So strategy hopping is a real problem, and it's very difficult in trading because you want evidence that will keep you on the path, but you have to actually make the commitment to a process and be well before that evidence shows up. So the only answer I have for that is trust. You just have to find someone that you trust and you believe is legitimate. I've done that. That's why I like Al Brooks, because he's been doing this for 15 years and he's also been trading for 35 years. Okay. So someone who's been in the game that long, not just some guy that showed up on YouTube recently, but someone who has written many published books and has been at this for years and still does it every day. That's someone that I trust. You have to find someone you trust.
trade management and risk management can add a huge edge to your trading. Take, for example, two traders. Trader one enters a single position with a stop and a target and doesn't have any trade management process. Basically set and forget. Compared to trader two, who enters the same position with the same stop and target, but when they're up 2R in profit, they add another position while managing that stop loss so they don't expose themselves to more risk. If the targets hit, trader two makes almost 2 times as much money as trader one just because they have a process for adding in the trades that work in their favor.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. And that's because personally, I've seen this not be true. I've seen this not be true. So I think that you have to take what he's saying with a grain of salt here.
And this has nothing to do with strategy. If you want actual proof of this working, take, for example, my student Mike, who before trading with me had a system already.
Okay, so he's teaching trading now. We're going to skip
The
that.
plan. Instead of running in circles with your strategy, focus on ironing out your processes and the money will follow.
Now, here's what I'll say. You don't have to follow this guy and do exactly what he says, right? He's talking about a specific way of managing a stop loss, adding to your position once you're in profit. Nothing wrong with any of that. Sounds good to me. But you just need to be consistent with whatever your system says. To me, that's the bottom line here.
Point number two, risk management.
At least that's what I think. But I didn't make $1 million in trading in 24 months. So what the hell do I know?
Is your only ticket out. Blowing an
Risk management is your only ticket out.
is like a rite of passage in trading. And I don't think I've ever met or heard of a successful trader who hasn't. There's a couple different ways that you're going to blow up your account, from either over trading or over leveraging, maybe even a combination of both.
Been there.
When it comes to over
Anyone else? Anyone else?
trading, if you don't have confidence in your setups, you're going to be trading emotionally. So whenever you see the market go up, you buy, and when you see it go down, you sell. And this happens all day long, and before you know it, it's death by 1,000 cuts. So you might be
Death by 1,000 paper cuts. True.
risking 1% per trade, but that doesn't mean anything if you're taking 50 trades in a day. And when it comes to over leveraging, you're just flat out greedy. You want to make more money than your account is capable of. So you put on a trade with too much size, and then when that trade doesn't do exactly what you want, you panic because you can't stomach that risk. When you boil both those issues down, you're simply just breaking important rules that are meant to keep you alive. And
Yeah, and I would also say this is putting the cart before the horse. It's trying to skip steps. It's not starting humble enough. So there's a misunderstanding here. I don't think it's greed as much as it's ignorance. If you don't know that by adding too much leverage and trying to move too quickly, you'll essentially destroy your progress, then you just don't know any better. Okay. So you have to go very, very slow, and it's going to be slower than you would like, or you're going to kind of burn out probably and give up. And most people give up. So you get to decide. Give in to those impulses and go as fast as you want, or go much slower and actually stay in the game and get the gold. It's up to you.
I hear people all the time say, I can't stop over trading or I can't stop over leveraging. Yeah, you can. Just stop doing it. You don't have an over trading or over leveraging problem. You have a discipline problem. And
yes, I couldn't agree more, but also it can go deeper than that, right? And that's why you have to read the book, The Mental Game of Trading by Jared Tendler, because discipline is not a cure-all for everything. It's one of them. It's one of the most common problems, but it could be something deeper.
And what I had to learn was, if I don't obey my risk management, I don't have any other safety net that will save my account. You could have the best strategy in the world. With terrible risk management, you're not going to make a dime. And on the other hand, you could break every single rule in your trading system, but at least if you follow your risk management, you're going to live to fight another day. Risk management has to become non-negotiable. So don't try and bend the rules for certain trades. And I built bad habits around risk and kept treating the markets like a lottery. So don't be like me when I was younger. Don't be like every other trader out there trying to hit it big and retire in one trade. That's exactly why I yell at my students all the time who overtrade and over leverage, because we all know how that really ends, in ruin. If I see my students trading on bank holidays or re-entering trades when it's already been invalidated or sizing up when they shouldn't be, I'm going to rip them a new one, because I don't want them to go through the same gut-wrenching pain of making these same mistakes over and over. I take risk management extremely seriously because it's the last line of defense.
And that's how you make $1 million in trading. Right? Is you take risk management that seriously. And I believe him. I believe every word he's saying.
The difference between you blowing up accounts or actually making money in the markets long term. When Izzo joined my program, the biggest thing he needs.
Okay, we're going to skip that.
You're going to blow up very, very quickly. And that's why it's your only ticket out. This has to become non-negotiable.
Risk management has to become a non-negotiable. Oh my God, it's so perfectly said. We all need that. Yes. Let's write that down and let's underline it and let's make 1,000 post-it notes and put them everywhere. Right? That is the keys to the kingdom is risk management. Let's put it that way.
Point number 3, patience pays. Now, this probably
Patience pays so good.
takes the longest to learn, and wouldn't it make sense? You need to have patience to learn patience. If you come to the markets and you're
No, you have to have discipline to learn patience.
extremely
You don't have to have patience to learn patience. Doesn't even make sense.
impatient, I've got bad news for you. You're not going to have a good time. And speaking from experience, I was an extremely impatient, impulsive person. And why this is such a huge problem for traders is because 1, you need to have patience to wait for the right setups. And 2, you need to have patience to wait for those setups to play out. We can't control what the markets do when we enter a trade. Sometimes they run straight to our target. Sometimes they run straight to our stop loss.
But this is the difference between a professional and an amateur. An amateur thinks that they do have some kind of control over what's happening, or they are under the illusion that that's going on, that they have anything to do with what the market's doing, right? That they're actually predicting what's happening. It's all illusion. It's all an illusion, right? You are not controlling the market. I'm not controlling the market. He's not controlling the market. And this is something you see from people who are very good at trading over and over and over again. They're very clear that they are not in control of what the market is doing. They're only in control of themselves. That's it.
And other times they chop around, maybe get close to our target and then retrace. But if you're impatient and exit your trades on any adverse price action, you effectively destroy your long-term profitability.
Again, process over everything.
The point of having proper risk reward and letting your winners run is that they need to be able to pay for the losers, and you're gonna have losers. There's a huge misconception when it comes to trading full time that you need to be doing something all the time, but the reality is 90% of the time we're actually doing nothing.
Yeah, look at Tori Trades. You guys know Tori Trades, the trader on YouTube. I think she's a swing trader. She does maybe like 5 trades a month, and she's doing multiple 6 figures that way. So no, less is more in trading for sure. It depends on your strategy, but you see this time and time again. This really messes with your head because you have been taught that you get paid for work. The more you work, the more you get paid. We've all been raised and trained to think that way. Trading completely disrupts that, flips it completely upside down. And you have to rethink that whole thing and literally re-understand what you're getting paid to do. You have to rethink that whole thing.
We're not trading every minute, and we're certainly not managing our trades that much either. And oftentimes, the best thing to do is to sit back, relax, and let the market do what it's going to do.
That's why I love bracket orders. Set the stop loss, set the profit target, and get the fuck out of there.
I only came to that realization after reviewing a lot of my trades. I would have a trade idea,
Same.
set my stop and target, but all the short-term price action kept getting me to exit, flip sides,
Same.
re-enter, whatever. And if I had just stuck to my original trade idea, I would have made effortless money. Now, in order
That was a massive breakthrough that I had in my own trading where I, for a month, did an experiment. It's called The Experiment by Mark Douglas. And here's what you do. You set up a trade, you put your profit target in your stop loss, and you do not touch it. And you do this over a series of trades. And I did this for 1 full month, and I had the best month profit-wise than I had ever had. It was a breakthrough in performance as far as profit was concerned. And also it was a breakthrough for my mental health because I was just chilling. I was just leave and I would go do other things for that time instead of staring at the screen and stressing out. So what does that show you? It shows you that process really is one of the major keys to success in trading.
In order for you to learn patience in the markets, you need to practice it and drill it into your strategy. Inside my program, I create challenges, which is when I'm
Okay.
find yourself squirming and getting anxious before your trade is at 2R, that just means you have a lot of work to do when learning patience.
Yeah, you just have to practice. Your nervous system's not used to it. It's just like lifting weights. Your system's not used to the pressure. And so you have to get used to the pressure and you have to go slow and you got to build up to it. And the only answer there is patience and persistence. You got to persist. You got to be determined.
But this drill is supposed to help you with that discipline. All right, point number 4, overconfidence is an account killer. How many
Oh my God, this is so true. So this is straight from The Mental Game of Trading by Jared Tendler. If you haven't read it, read it.
of you guys have experienced this? You string together a few wins, think you've cracked the code, and then you size up huge on your next trade, only to take a massive loss and wipe out days, weeks, or even months of hard work in one bad trade or a series of bad trades.
Most traders blow up right after a big success. It's like 99% of the time that's how it happens. So when you're new, you don't realize that the second that you have a big win, you are inches away from blowing everything. And it's a really, really brutal lesson to learn. But this is called overconfidence. And if you're interested in succeeding in trading, it's something you have to start to get very familiar with. Overconfidence.
Trading is that the highs are really high and the lows are really low. It can be an emotional roller coaster at times. And this is where I think females actually have an advantage in the markets. As men, we have this alpha personality and we hate being wrong. So we have a tendency to revenge trade and size up because we need to prove to the market and everyone we know that we're right. But
that might be true. That might be true. I don't know. Let's ask Tanya Trades. She seems to be doing pretty good.
Market is never wrong. And if you're trading improperly, making decisions based on ego rather than logic, it's going to take the food right out of your mouth. There's actually an argument that people who are too smart don't make good traders because people with too much intelligence are always trying to find logic and reason in things. But sometimes there's no logic to the markets.
There's always logic to the markets. Otherwise, there wouldn't be transactions occurring. What he said literally doesn't make sense there. But to think that you're always going to figure out every single moment and you're going to know exactly what's happening in every single moment, that's crazy. That's just absolute insanity, right? So you have to like take a step back and say, yes, there's reasons why transactions are occurring. Buyers and sellers are buying and selling for some sort of reason. So it's not illogical. However, that's none of your business. Your business is to execute your system and stick to your process and just, stay the hell out of everything else. That's really the bottom line there. And I think it's something that only takes practice. It just takes practice. There's no other way to say it.
This might cause them to place bets that are a sure thing and discount the fact that there's a reality in which they could be wrong. And I'm sure you've all heard the saying, markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. And there's so much truth behind it. Think about The Big Short. If you haven't seen it, it's about the 2008 housing market crash. And leading up to it, there were a bunch of firms that were predicting the collapse and bet big on it. But for many months, the market kept trending higher and higher. And some had margin and funding requirements so large that it put the firms at risk of closing. That's a case where the market was irrationally moving against what all the data suggested. It actually worked out in their favor because they had deep pockets, but this overconfidence almost ruined them. The way I combat that is by practicing strict position sizing.
I like this guy.
Setting your own table limits. In the markets, the house doesn't set a limit, so it's up to you. So here's a practical exercise that I make my students do.
Okay, let's underline that. There's no limit to how much you can lose in trading. That's why this is one of the most brutal games there is. Okay, I'm working on this video right now about Mark Douglas, who came up with these things called the 7 principles of consistency. Mark Douglas is the best teacher of trading psychology that ever lived. And he lost his wife and his house learning how to trade. Okay. Have you lost your wife and your house? Like, people have literally lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, their marriage. Like, it is so absolutely gut wrenching, the amount of punishment that a person can be faced with when they decide to learn how to trade. And there are people who have been taken out, and it is absolutely tragic. So what we're talking about here is how to avoid ruin. And that's why some of these exercises, like we're talking about, which is setting your profit target and your stop loss and learning how to have the discipline and the patience to get the hell out of there and just let the trade do what it's going to do. You don't see it at the time, right? But that could be the difference between succeeding and losing your wife and your house. Just think about that for a second.
For the next 25 trades, force yourself to trade the same risk regardless of the stop loss size.
That's basically what I'm saying.
And if the stop is too wide and you can't get within that specific risk, then you can't take the trade. This is supposed to enforce discipline when it comes to position sizing so that when you're overconfident, you're not going overboard and over leveraging.
Okay, so I just wanted to share one of the lessons from Mark Douglas because this is perfectly related to what he's saying. So Mark Douglas has something called the experiment. And here's the experiment. You do the exact same setup, the exact same way with the same rules for stop loss and profit target. And you do that 30 trades in a row. And the only thing that happens is either the trade either gets to your stop or it gets to your profit target, and that's it. And you document the results. And what Mark Douglas promises if you do this experiment, and it's what I promise you as well, because I did it and I found that he was right, is that it will completely transform your trading and it will cause a breakthrough in your understanding of what it takes to trade well.
Number 5, take breaks often. This is something I
Very good.
really wish somebody told me earlier in my career. When you're learning how to trade, or if you've just gone full time, sometimes it feels like if you're not studying, back testing, or trading the live markets, that you just aren't making progress. But
Oh, by the way, this guy's been trading for 13 years. Okay, 13 years. So this guy's been trading a long time.
I'm going to be one of the first ones to say that that's a one-way ticket to burning out. Think about it like this. There's 250 trading days in a year, excluding holidays. There is no professional sport in the world that has athletes play back-to-back games
It's
for
true.
that stretch of time. They have off seasons, they have days off. They use that time to study previous games, recover, and train. If they didn't, they would play horribly, be injured all the time, and probably end up missing a whole lot of games because they're just flat out tired.
You have to take breaks. This is what he's trying to say.
Take my student Fernando, for example.
No, don't tell us about your student. Let's keep going.
You do too much damage to your accounts. Point number 6, know yourself. In my opinion,
And one other note on taking breaks. What makes someone good at trading is objectivity. Being able to utilize counter logic and not get too attached to your position. Generally, this is true. So by taking breaks, it helps refresh that objectivity muscle. Refresh. So that's why taking breaks are also very important, because if you take breaks and you give your brain just kind of like oxygen, right? You just let it rest for a little bit, even for a few minutes. Even if you just turn around in your chair and close your eyes and just breathe for 60 seconds. That alone can supercharge your performance. And if you inject those throughout the trading session, you're going to be a better trader.
trading is more like a personality test rather than a test of skill. If you're greedy or fearful, the markets will expose that. If you have anger problems, the markets will expose that. If you're impatient, the markets will expose that.
The markets will expose everything, every single flaw that you have. That is, it's so brutal.
This is part of trading that some people just never master because it requires you to be honest with yourself.
Oh, it's so hard.
Just aren't comfortable doing.
And if you struggle with that, Jared Tendler is a good place to go. Jared Tendler, The Mental Game of Trading.
If you aren't willing to change parts of your personality, the ones that really hold back your trading performance, you'll likely never find true success.
I don't agree with that. It's not changing your personality, it's developing different habits. You can be the same guy, but have different habits. Now, maybe that's changing who you are. I don't know. But I don't think you need to fundamentally change who you are. I think you just have to learn a different way of acting.
Now, I'm not saying you need to completely change your personality in order to be a good trader, but you do need to be aware of your shortcomings and how they're going to hold back your trading.
Yes. And if you want to actually get a very easy way to do that, because it's nearly impossible to just kind of figure that out on your own, go to 16personalities.com and just take a personality test, and it'll tell you exactly what your strengths and weaknesses are. And then you can go use ChatGPT and take your personality type, plug it into ChatGPT and say, hey, what are the areas that are weaknesses for me when it comes to trading based on this personality type? And what's some advice that I can use to work on those? It's a really, really powerful strategy.
And sometimes when you're deeply flawed, it does require you to change. Knowing yourself is an actual edge in the markets. It allows you to avoid many of the big mistakes because you can catch yourself before it gets out of control. But if you don't know yourself, that's something the market can help you with, which is why journaling is so important.
See, this is a whole different perspective, right? What if you looked at the market as a place to help you grow, as an entity, as an environment that was going to show you all the ways in which you had the opportunity to grow, and to point those out to you so that you could actually grow and become a better human being, better in trading and also better in life. Now, what a beautiful opportunity that is, huh?
If you're struggling with trading right now, getting to know yourself is one way to fast track your improvement. So start by taking notes of all your behaviors and habits. There are certain habits and triggers that will have an impact on your decision making. And really at the end of the day, that's all trading is, making good, logical decisions. So if you have a certain trigger that causes you to overtrade or over leverage or break your rules, at least you can become aware of it. So the next time it happens, you can avoid doing too much damage. Also,
yeah. And so Jared Tendler, he has a whole process for this, and he calls this data collection. So you just basically write it all down and collect all the data, and you document your thoughts, your behaviors, your the way that your brain changes based on wins and losses.
So it's good to have an accountability partner because it keeps you honest. At times, it's easy to get lost in the markets and forget who we are and why we're doing this.
It's
But
true.
when you're sharing the things that you're struggling with, it reinforces the idea that you do have flaws and you are working on them actively. Too many traders get caught up in the day to day of markets and put this unnecessary pressure on themselves to perform. They treat every single trading session like it's make or break. And you need to realize that a single trade or a single day is not going to have a massive impact on your trading success long term. What
Well, it could ruin you. So yes and no.
matters is that you stay consistent to the process. So instead of thinking one trade from now, why don't you think about 10 or 20 trades from now? One trade is just a single data point in a long equity curve. And when you review your journal for the year, you won't even remember those days where you went on tilt. There'll be this small blip on the radar. So
Mark Douglas taught to think about wins and losses as random. He said there's a random distribution of wins and losses in a data set, in any given data set. So in a sense, on a individual trade by trade basis, that win or lose is arbitrary. What matters is the overall direction.
well, here's a mindset shift that helped me tremendously when I was on the verge of quitting. Give yourself a much longer time horizon for your trading goals.
Okay, so he started trading in January, and his first 10K payout was in July. All right.
Back in 2019, I sat down and said, enough is enough. I either take this seriously or I'm going to quit trading forever. I'm going to become a full-time trader in 5 years.
Hey, props to him for including that photo, right? Am I right?
I'm going to quit trading forever.
Jade, good for you, man. I got some embarrassing photos too to share. Good. I mean, that's courage, right?
I'm going to become a full-time trader in 5 years. I actually ended up achieving that goal in under 3. And having the bigger picture always in my mind allowed me to relax in my trades, be comfortable with the risks I was taking, and it actually made trading fun again. So the next time you're sitting at your desk and it feels like the world's falling apart, just close the terminal and think about your long-term goal and how you're going to get there. I guarantee that over trading and breaking all your rules is not part of the plan. So
No, but also just sitting there and turning off the machine would be like taking a pot of boiling water and taking it off the stove. The water is going to stay hot for a long time after that. So just stop. Just pulling away when that happens is insufficient. You need some processes to actually deal with the emotions that came up. And all of this is being provided by Jared Tendler. So I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but he's helped me a lot. And I've been working with him for a number of years now. And I just recommend him highly. So check out his processes and check out his website. He has a bunch of free tools that you can use and start using right away for this.
make sure you're always aligned with your long-term plan and everything else will fall into place naturally. So these were the 7 biggest lessons that I learned on my journey to making $1 million from trading. I know we covered a lot, but the reality is there's a huge learning curve when it comes to the markets. If you're interested to find out how you can shorten that learning curve by joining my apprentice.
Okay, so that's Jade Cap, and I want to give a shout out to Jade Cap for the 7 lessons. Thank you, sir. Now let's see. Let's try and wrap this up. Let's just kind of go through the lessons, right? Like, let's look at all 7. So lesson 1, less emphasis on strategy, more on process. Absolutely, 100%. You need to define your process first and foremost, because if you're like most traders, your process is not even well defined. I have asked traders that I was trading with, and I've said, what is your setup? Can you explain it simply? And they can't do it. So start by clarifying your process. And then once you've clarified your process, put the emphasis on the process more than anything else. 100%. All right. Now, what about lesson 2? He's saying build an edge through process. Okay, cool. Lesson 2, risk management is your lifeline. Risk management is your lifeline. Yes. We already talked about that. I mean, it is. Okay. Let's see. Lesson 3, the real cost of overtrading and over leveraging. Now, I want to say these are 2 separate. These are 2 things you got to attack separately. Overtrading is different than over leveraging, right? Those are 2 kind of distinct problems. So how do you deal with overtrading and how do you stop it? Well, you have to use a process for working through your psychological issues in your trading performance. It's not going to go away on its own. And it's also not going to be something that's simple. This is going to be an involved thing. I know you don't want to hear that, but it is. So use a tool like the mental hand history from Jared Tendler that will help you understand. It's a series of questions that will help you understand exactly what's going on and why. And it starts by asking why. What's the problem? That's the first question. Clearly define it. This is from the mental hand history. And the second question in this process from him is, why does it make sense that this would be happening? Why does it make sense that you'd be having this problem? Why does it make sense that you'd be acting this way? And you have to actually look and take time and self-reflect. So that's over trading, and then attack over leveraging in a similar way. But I'm willing to bet that if you attack over trading first, some of the issues with over leveraging will sort themselves out. Okay, the next lesson is, let's see, patience pays in trading. And, I just want to mention what he said about that, which is that it takes patience to learn patience. And I just don't think that's true. Like, you have to choose that you're going to be disciplined, and it's a decision that you have to make. And it's a tough one, and it's rough. Learning patience is rough. Patience was my word of the year to focus on for like 3 years in a row when I first started trading. Okay, so it's probably the most important mental skill that you can build, and it does pay if you can learn it. It's the hardest thing to learn, and it probably pays more than any other skill. So learn that process, or learn that skill, and start practicing. And how do you do it? Practice. Lesson 4, overconfidence can ruin your account. We talked about overconfidence. For any of these mental psychological issues, use the mental hand history from Jared Tendler to attack it, right? And you can attack it, and you can kind of figure out exactly how it's functioning, and you can dismantle it. So that's overconfidence, lesson 4. And let's see what he says for lesson 5. The power of taking breaks. We talked about that. This is a really simple one. So let's put 2 things together for lesson 5, the power of taking breaks. Number 1, discipline is something you're going to have to get better at if you want to do well in trading. It's true for all of us, you, me, everyone, okay? Even this guy needs to practice discipline. I promise you that. So how do you practice discipline? Take breaks. Here's the perfect way to practice: taking breaks. There's no better way to practice. So set a timer and say, I'm going to take a 2-minute break or a 5-minute break ever so often, and then see how often you can do that. And if you can do it once, but you miss, if you do 1 out of 3 times you try to do it, the other 2 times you just can't get away, then try and gradually build up. So that's the power of taking breaks. And I'm just adding a piece here, which is use the power of taking breaks to practice developing your discipline. Now, lesson 6, knowing yourself is key. Now, how do you do that? Journaling. The answer is journaling, right? Not journaling your trades per se, although you should do that, but this is journaling about your thoughts, reflections, what you think about trading, how you feel about trading. Just take some time to do that, and do something called a brain dump, where you set a timer for, say, 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, and you just write everything that comes to mind. And you just do a rapid emptying out. This is one of the best ways that you can get to know yourself as a trader. So that's something I'd recommend for how to actually know yourself, because you got to know how to do it, right? Not just that it's important. So those are the 6 key lessons from our man, Jade Cap. Jade, thanks for this great video. And thank you for watching and subscribing and liking this video if you liked it. Hey, I'm not going to ask you to click the like button if you didn't like it. I mean, it's all good. I'm not for everyone. But if you liked it, hit that like button, because I like you.